So, hey, Sarah and Chuck, you know, America really loves their celebrities.
Yes.
We love following TV stars, movie stars, sports guys, athletes, and all that. Well, it's kind of crept into the church. And you know what? We're going to talk about that today.
If it's Christian, we're talking about it. This is the Mike Charleston Show.
All right. Thank you for the celebrityness. There we go. So, yeah, as you can see on the title, we are going to be talking about the celebrities in the church. But before we get into all that, you know, Chuck has been away for a couple weeks. No, it wasn't because he had some issues and we had to do an NDA or anything and discipline him or anything. He was visiting his family up in Ohio after the camp. And and it turned out your family is sick now.
Yeah. Everybody kind of, almost everybody got sick coming home.
Yeah, Chuck is all good.
I am.
Yeah.
So anyway,
hopefully we'll stay that way.
That's right. So this episode, this one's going to be a little bit different. You know, usually we have a bunch of notes and we do have notes and stuff, but this one kind of came across. We had different ideas of shows that we were going to do, and then I saw a bunch of things on Robert Morris and Tony Evans. Just came up within the last couple weeks, and I was watching some videos, and it really disgusted me, and it just really, you know, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go and find it. But Robert Morris is a pastor of Gateway Church in Dallas, Texas. I really wasn't aware of his work. I've heard of his name before. He's kind of big time.
I heard of the church, but not him, the Gateway Church.
Well, about 100,000 people are associated with this church. This is campus ministry,
satellite
campuses, things like that, and the influence he has on other megachurch pastors is big. Tony Evans. Now, I think you know who Tony Evans is.
Yeah, I know Tony Evans. I've always been somebody who liked listening to Tony Evans.
Right. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan, but when he's on, I like his style, and he usually has something pretty decent to say. Well, he stepped down recently, and there's, you know, whether it's Mars Church or Harvest or Hillsong, you know, with the Levi, is it Levi? No, it's
something Lentz.
Lentz, that's right. And, you know, these guys, he is truly a celebrity pastor, reaching out to celebrities and having, you know, Justin Bieber at his church and hanging out with these people. And it has never gone well. Like, it doesn't end well for these people. But specifically with Robert Morris, his story was kind of troublesome for me to deal with because I believe in forgiveness and I believe in do-overs. But however, I'm a house church guy. Okay, everyone that's been watching the show for years, you should know I am not for the institutional style church. But I'm going to suspend some of this to kind of enter into that world for today a little bit because I don't want to judge it based on, well, all this is wrong, you know, anyway. Yeah. But, you know, Robert Morris, he sinned some 35 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, had a very inappropriate relationship with a 12-year-old while he was married, and he was 21. So from 21 to 25, he was abusing an underage person. And it kind of finally came out. It was working its way out throughout the years, and somehow, for some reason, it came out now. And she came forward, and he resigned. And I guess rightly so. I'm like, to me, that's where it's tough. Like 35 years ago, but he's been profiting on this for a while, and this is kind of where he made his deal. He should have never been a pastor to begin with. He should never even got to that point. And he was a predator, and early on in his ministry, and then he went to this freedom recovery type class for 2 years, and that was it. He should have been in jail for what he did.
I mean, the way I understand it, he was the pastor when he was 21.
Well, he was a pastor. I don't think he was the senior pastor, but he was probably...
So he was on staff at some church.
Right.
And they did dismiss him.
Yes.
And then he went through this program that you're talking about.
And then someone else hired him.
Right. And never... I mean, I'm like you. I'm willing to understand that people sin and they can be forgiveness and they can be repentance and they can change. But where's the consequence here? You know, this was something that he should have been in prison for.
Well, and the other church that hired him after all this, you know, when he confessed what he had done, it was very subtle. It was in how he said it, where I had an inappropriate relationship. I basically had an affair outside of marriage with a young lady. Well, then when we find out that the young lady is 12, it changes everything. And it's like, well, dude, you should have been in jail. And for whatever reason, you didn't go and you went to this program and then you end up taking this church. So that's what he's been telling people this whole time. It was a young lady. Before I got saved, that's kind of the insinuation and all this. Well, actually, he was in ministry when this was going on, and he was preaching for 4 years while this was going on. And it only came out, not because of conviction, but because she confessed to her dad and brought it before the church, and that's when he got dismissed. And this has been happening a lot lately. So whether it's Carl Lentz, that's his name, Carl Lentz, the Driscoll guy, out, you know, he's reemerged. They just repackage it and come back different. And it's like, we're all forgiven, and it's all these NDAs. And so basically what I'm saying is, okay, so
what's an NDA for those who don't know?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. The non-disclosure agreement where, now in business, what an NDA is that...
Well, you got specific property, that's intellectual property that you actually have, and whenever you have a contract with someone, they actually then acquire that intellectual property, and you need an NDA to be able to make sure they're not going to share that with somebody else who could
they quit
compete against you.
Go over to Microsoft, you know, or go to Apple and be like, hey, this is what's going. So a lot of NDA in business. Well, why is this in church? Well, some people are like, well, because they work and they get passwords and they don't want you slandering whatever. Okay, but they're most of the NDAs, why don't you go ahead and read this? This came from, I forget what website it was. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't remember. It says, not every church or faith-based organization that uses NDAs has faced scandal, but of the groups that have faced scandal in recent years, NDAs were inevitably part of the mix. That's true for Mars Hill Church, Harvest Bible Chapel, Hillsong Church, Hillsong College, Willow Creek Community Church, Acts 29, Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, and Ramsey Solutions.
Yeah, and I don't know all the particulars of all of those groups, but all of them usually involve some kind of sexual sin. And I'm like, why? How does this happen? And so that's what we were wanting to talk about today, that the whole idea of this celebrity mega church, kind of what we said at the top of the show, like, we like celebrities in America. Like, we praise them. We want them on TV. We even had one as president. You know, he was a celebrity. And he made himself known in this world by being a celebrity, like as a real estate mogul, but really because he was on TV. And he loved the limelight, and well, it got him the presidency, and so that goes for politicians too. You know, they're celebrity politicians, but that's another show. We have celebrity athletes,
but it is an interesting mix. I mean, the same dynamic is in play there.
Sure,
you know, you get this taste of power.
Yes.
And that taste of power then produces action where you feel like you're...
Or would it be more fame first before power?
Potentially.
Because you get
you
popular.
could. Yeah, it's popular. But, I mean, you get other people feeding your ego.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you feel like, you know, you're it.
That's it.
Well, I was reading, and they said that when you get up to speak, that you open yourself up to criticism.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, you know, a lot of people will have things to say, but you also open yourself up to praise.
Absolutely.
And that praise has effects on you.
Yeah.
Well, we were watching a video on the way to the camp, and I'm not a huge fan of Francis Chan, but he had a message, and I really liked the message, so we were listening to it, and that's what he said at the beginning. He's like, every time the stage is dangerous. And he quit his mega church and ended up doing house churches and things like that. But he says, anytime I get up on here, I feel like it's a little bit more poison because it is dangerous to be up here on a stage. And being up on a stage, I can relate with it somewhat. You know, I don't get on a stage that often. Maybe twice a year, three times a year, maybe. What we do at our fellowship is we don't get on a stage. It's not about us, but we sit around our living room and we're just amongst the people. Sometimes we stand up front just because it makes sense, you know. But It's we definitely don't have a stage and we're elevated and look at me. The celebrity church, the mega church, has presented or has produced this kind of atmosphere.
Yeah,
it has to. You're up there. You're telling everybody out here we're in awe of what you say. And let's just think about how this happens. So a mega church is basically a CEO, right? Or the pastor of a
an
mega
organization
church.
that's large, it's impossible not to be.
Right. You have to be. And so in order to be successful, to have a big church, you pretty much have to, and there might be some exceptions, maybe James Dean Kennedy, if you remember him a long time ago, he was very dry and very boring. But for the most part, if you have a big church, you have to be some kind of charismatic person, like not charismatic as in the belief system, but you have to be charismatic. You have to be likable. You have to be kind of cool. You have to be a good communicator, and you have to have some nice things to say, and that's what kind of raises you up. And people are like, "Ooh, I want to go see what he has to say." And so we elevate him to like, what is he going to say? Give me something special. So you believe in your mind, you're God's man. Well, that gets to your head. That has to get to your head, that I am God's man and I can say whatever I want to say, and these people are going to believe what I say. And if they don't, get rid of them. Just, I don't care. More people are coming in. Look at the numbers. We must be successful based on numbers. And that's a bad way to judge success in a church. Maybe in a corporate environment, if revenue's up, that's good.
But in a church, that's not what you're looking for. No. I mean, you want to, I would think you define success in a church by how you see changed lives.
Sure.
You want to see what comes from people being able to be in your midst and see their lives change, but
absolutely
not by people praising you for what you're able to say and do.
Well, no, I was showing you that video, and it does seem like the thing about mega churches are, I invite you to come to mine and pump me up. Then I go to yours and pump you up.
I don't think I realized that before watching the video.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was just over and over and over. So you can't, like I said, you can't stand up there as the senior pastor of this church and say it about yourself.
Yeah, I'm the greatest pastor.
Right. But you invite somebody else over that's a visiting pastor, and they say it about you, and then you go to their church and say it about them, and it's like, well, this is disgusting.
Oh, it's terrible. And if you go to one of these churches, I mean, think about it right now. If you've heard this is a scheme. This is what they've come up with, and it works. As you feel like you're part of something big, if they tell you you're part of something big, if they tell you we're doing something that no one else is doing, you feel like you're part of something. You feel like we're doing something. But are you really? You're just going to a TED Talk and a concert, like I've always said. But are you really accomplishing anything? No. You're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But here's what they'll say. They'll say stuff like that. Like, oh, you're fortunate to have a pastor that like this is the greatest pastor around this area, maybe even in the United States. He's the greatest pastor. You're so fortunate to be part of this ministry. You're a part of something that this group is doing, that something that nobody else is doing. If you hear that stuff, you're in a bad place, because that all they're doing is just pumping their own tires, and their ego is about ready to explode. But if you hear that, if they truly are doing something that nobody else is doing, they'd be humble.
Which is interesting, because I remember recently I was talking to someone that lives in a different state and part of a different church, and they were saying that they do this thing now before church where they do the pep rally or something, where all the staff and everybody from the church all comes together, and then they basically do a pep rally, and they'll talk about how many numbers were here last week and all these different things to get everybody pumped up so that you can go to your various places or whatever. But I don't know. To her, it was kind of strange. I had never heard of that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's what they do in the backgrounds and say like, hey, okay, we're doing this. We're doing something. Let's go tell the people what we're doing. Yeah. Where do you find that in Scripture? You don't find that. We don't need to pump each other like that. We're supposed to encourage each other in the faith and to love and to good works. And I guess if the good works is bringing in numbers.
Don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, right?
That's right. Right. It's like whatever happened to just simple Christianity, where we loved one another and we had that intimate relationship with a few people. There is no way that these mega churches can have intimate relationships with each other. They just show up.
Most of the churches of that size never even been able to speak to the pastor.
No, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. How many could possibly have met Robert Morris?
There's no way.
No way. You have 100,000 people supposedly
make him stand at the back of the church and shake every hand on the way out, right?
There's no way. And so how can he be a quote-unquote pastor? Now, I have problems necessarily with that word, but as a church leader, how can you possibly get to know people in your church when it's that big? And that is overwhelming. And you travel around and go speak at other places and stuff like that. And I'm not good at traveling and all that, but your main focus should be on the people that you're around. And once it gets so big, and I'm not saying I'm going to create a structure here and it has to be a certain amount of people, but I obviously believe in a smaller group. And there's more intimacy, and you can raise up church leaders. And then when it gets too big, you multiply from that, and you divide healthily. Not a church division, but it's a healthy division where it's not about the preaching, it's not about the music, it's about Jesus. And unfortunately, about these churches, it's about the music, it's about the preaching, it's about the look, it's about the image. It's disgusting.
But don't you think that maybe on some level, some of these churches, they would say that it is about Jesus. And if they have this great preacher get up, then, the crowds will come. You get the thousands of people, tens of thousands of people to come. And so you're able to reach more people with Jesus.
I'm sure that's exactly what they're pushing. They're saying it's like an MLM formula, hey, you get me under me, and then I get you under you, and that's basically what Robert Morris was doing. The number of pastors that are under him is shocking. I was surprised at the number of people that he has promoted or help start, and then they get people under him, and I'm like, this is an MLM, but this isn't business. Come on, So that's what that's what they're saying, that this is all to promote Jesus. But in fact, it has the flip results. You are shaming the name of Jesus when stuff like this happens. So let's just talk about this. A little church down the road. I don't know how many people go there. A couple hundred. Let's just say a couple hundred. The pastor gets caught doing something stupid, and he's one of the church leaders, and he was messing around like he shouldn't have, and he resigns. Only those people pretty much know, because he's not a celebrity. No one cares. No one cares about the guy down the street there. Right. Tony Evans has a big following because we like what he has to say. Robert Morris has a big following. All these people have a big following. Carl Lentz had a huge following. Yeah. And when they fail or when they fall apart or something like that, it's like, well, what happened? So twofold problems are, one, you expect them to be perfect, which is unrealistic. Right. Yeah, they're not perfect. And so when they do fail, it's a black eye on the church. And look at these Christians. They don't know what they're doing. It's problematic. And you're talking about 100,000 people are affected by this in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And that's sad. All those churches, and unfortunately, a lot of these churches, they just sweep it under the rug no big deal. It is what it is. They don't hold these people to a certain standard. Now, we're going to talk about in the Bible, it actually has a standard. Yeah,
it does. And I mean, if 35 years ago they would have applied the standard, he would have never been in ministry to begin with.
That's right. He should not. He was a young convert, at least, so he should not have been. But quickly, I know we talked about this just a few episodes ago, the call to preach, but it seems like this is just rearing its ugly head. The church has a problem. So 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, are we going to read the whole thing? Yeah, we'll read the whole thing. Chuck, why don't you go ahead and read it?
Okay. This is a true saying. If a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work.
Okay, well, we'll stop right there. For the sake of this argument, I know a lot of people say pastors right there, bishop, elder, whatever, a church leader.
Yep,
so for the sake of this argument, let's just even go with pastor here, okay? Yeah. Even though I don't think it's an office, I think it's more of a gift, but let's just go with this right now. Church leader.
A bishop then must be blameless, the husband.
Blameless. These guys, Robert Morris, is he blameless?
No,
there's full of blame right there. Yeah. Ravi Zacharias failed. Yeah. And we're not talking about, once again, we're not talking about perfection. We're talking about huge mess ups here.
Well, that's what I heard one person say. Well, everybody messes up.
Right.
And it's true. We all are flawed humans.
Sure.
But Not everybody messes up the same.
No one commits criminal acts.
Right. Some people should be in jail. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay, so blameless.
It must be blameless. The husband of one wife.
Okay, there. I think he got that one. Being okay, great.
Well, he didn't marry the other one.
That's true.
Vigilant, sober, of good behavior.
Okay, so sober is an interesting word.
Yeah, we're not talking about drunkenness.
Right. But because it could have multiple. It could mean sober in alcohol, but also sober-minded. Like if you get up on stage and are heaped praise upon praise, that is not sober. That is not sober. And accepting all this praise, and I know he can't I can't help that he just praised me, but
but if you invited him over to do it,
that's the problem. Okay, so sober,
good behavior.
Come on, he should not have been a pastor. Come on,
given to hospitality.
He was actually at someone else's house when this happened.
Right.
He was the family was being hospitable, and this is how he treated the family with the hospitality. That is disgusting. Anyway.
Apt to teach.
I think that was the one thing he could do, and they were like, "Let's run with it." This seems to be the only one that's important in the mega churches because we want something dynamic. We want something special. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Not given to wine.
I don't know about that, man. Yep.
No striker. Not greedy of filthy lucre.
Okay, no, we could stop on this one for a while. He wrote a book called The Blessed Life, and it's basically give all your tithes to me and over and above, and you'll be blessed. It's a typical prosperity dribble, and all these mega church pastors. I don't want to judge them all, but they're living a good life.
They are.
They're living off the backs of people using things like Malachi 3 as a reason to do it.
Well, I mean, not only that, but they have this massive organization that takes a tremendous amount of money just to exist.
Yes.
What are you doing with all that money?
It keeps going back into the quote unquote ministry.
Right. And is there good that comes from it? I'm sure there is. I'm sure you can look at some of it, but I mean, you think about what could be done.
I know.
Really be done.
Yeah.
Yes.
With all those resources. Must be patient.
Okay.
Not a brawler. Not covetous.
Yeah. Come on, man.
One that ruleth his own house, having his children in subjection and with all gravity. Which
goes into the not a novice, because he was way too young to even... A lot of these people start out way too young, and they get puffed up. And, quickly read the rest.
All right. For if a man knoweth not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil.
And that, finish the next verse, because this is a big one.
Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil.
Okay, well, specifically Robert Morris, he had not a good report. Once this came out, that was a criminal report, and he should have been removed from ministry at that point because he fell into the snare of the devil, thinking that he could take advantage of the situation. He should have been in jail, taking advantage of a 12-year-old. This went on for 4.5 years, by the way, 4.5 years.
Right.
So this is, I'm not saying that every mega church has a predator in the pulpit. I'm not saying that. But this is the type of attitude, in order for the mega church to exist, you have to worry about numbers. You have to keep the people coming in.
Yeah.
So how do you do this? You have to compromise a message, maybe, I don't know. You have to preach on giving, money. God's going to bless you if you give. The prosperity, that's right.
Pretty much.
That's why the prosperity message is very popular in these type churches. God's going to bless you. The health and wealth gospel is alive and living in these types of churches. It almost looks more like a nightclub, and smoke machines and lights and the music and the preaching. Everything is it works to a T. It's just great. It's a great show to go to. And we've talked about this ad nauseum. We've talked about it many times. But this is the danger of having celebrity pastors. Like, when did this become a thing? When did it happen? We had televangelists come into existence when the TV came. So there wasn't televangelists. There was maybe circuit riders and things like that. But, these celebrity pastors, it's a fairly new thing. These mega churches are fairly new. They're popping up all over. The small churches are dying. It's kind of like the Walmart, comes in. Amazon centers coming over and takes over the mom and pop shops. So there's no more small get to know the owner and
no more general store.
No, not really.
Doesn't exist.
And you go to Walmart and says, "Can anybody help me?" No, but look at all the stuff we have. It's kind of like the church. Can anybody help me? No, but look at all the stuff we have. We got programs. We've got everything for you. And will it change your life? No. But in fact, we're secretly hiding sins, and we're telling you what to be. And like Tony Evans, no one knows his sin. It's just been a secret sin for many years. I'm like, come on, man. What's going on? Why can't they? Why can't they be honest and take care of this stuff when it's going on? That's what they're telling us to do. Yeah. And but because they are called to preach, it's like we just fast forward them into the ministry. And I'm like, Tony Evans' is disappointment because he's 72 years old. It seemed like he had been faithful.
72?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
I am 53.
Ravi Zacharias was a huge disappointment to me because he had a whole life, and then at the end, things came out. Yeah. Yeah, all these other mega churches, it doesn't surprise me because it's all about the show, and it doesn't honestly surprise me. It still hurts because it's embarrassing to the name of Christ. But it's basically a CEO of a corporation. And I think, maybe I shouldn't call out your parents, but
maybe not.
No, okay. Anyway, I won't mention them.
I will, like I asked you about in the Bible, do we have any examples of people who led 100,000 people or thousands and thousands of people. And I know you said Moses, but I wouldn't really count Moses as a celebrity because most people didn't like him.
I don't think he wanted to do it.
He didn't want to do
it. The job.
He tried to give it up.
And he was, hated much of the time.
Well, Jesus had followers, and many people, obviously the feeding of the 5,000, there was 5,000 people there. He didn't go seek it out. He never sought out crowds.
They didn't stay with him, though. Where were they at his crucifixion?
Right. His message was divisive, and they were like, once he said, "Are you willing to eat of my flesh and drink my blood?" They all left. Yeah. People are like, "I don't know what this guy's talking about." Right. And then when he got arrested, even his disciples fled. Yeah. And so when it came down to the nitty-gritty, everybody left because of his message. But he had followers. People kept following him, but he kept leaving them, and he didn't try to keep them. And
So you got an interesting quote here, and I was curious to where it came from. I don't know if there was any context around it, but the quote is, "Over time, popularity has taken out more pastors than persecution."
Yeah, I don't know where that you found that.
Somewhere
I
online.
Remember where?
I
was curious if there was context to it, but that's an interesting
but
statement.
It is like popularity has taken out more pastors than persecution. In America, persecution is null and void. But popularity, boy, oh boy, has it brought down from Jimmy Swaggart to Jim Baker to, the list goes on, and they don't learn from their lessons, the other people's lessons. And they get too big of a head thinking they can accomplish whatever they want to accomplish, and they can do to people whatever they feel like doing, even if it's criminal. And it's really sad. So you had, I don't want to, it's important to differentiate fame. Yeah. And I don't want to get into all that right now, but, so you were asking me, like, is there anything that could be done?
Yeah. So, what's the answer if, you're part of a mega church or, that's,
get out.
That's okay. Oh, but what should people that,
they're not preaching truth at these mega churches. There's a reason why they're mega churches. They got to keep people happy. Truth is a sidebar. Maybe it's mixed in there somewhere, but you're not really getting truth.
Okay, so preach truth, but what should the leadership look like?
So the only thing I can think of is, for one, they should all divide up. I've known a couple of, Francis Chan Church tried to do this. There was other churches that did this in the Baton Rouge area, that they just divided up into smaller groups and became churches themselves. And then the leadership kind of watched over and, made sure everything was going well. And obviously that's a model I agree with, is a city church model where you have multiple churches that are small in nature, and you have multiple elders, and maybe they get together so often, And maybe every once in a while you get a big gathering with everybody, which would be nice. I'm not against big gatherings.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, you have a group that's together and they decide that they're getting too big and they want to make it a more smaller in order to be more intimate and have those relationships. But yeah, I think there's times where you want to get everybody together just to be able to enjoy the fellowship and have that other encouragement from the other groups.
Yeah.
It's really good. So I mean, we do camps, and I enjoy it when 400 people are singing, and it's like, oh, this is nice. Yeah. But it's also nice to have that intimate relationships and know that this person knows who I am. They know my weaknesses. They know my strengths. They can help me when I'm struggling with something. And it's a wonderful thing to have, is the intimacy of the church. That is what the church was designed for, not to go sit in a theater-style church and be a nobody, and no one knows you exist. And so really in the 90s, they tried this thing called care groups, small groups, cell groups, the cell group movement. Yeah. And that is, because they saw there's problems with the megachurch and there's no intimacy. And so they did these cell groups. Problem is that the pastor still has to have control, and he's like, you guys share this in the cell groups. And they didn't have autonomy. And so the gifts of people and all, they can't be moving in the small group. And so it was still control. And that's what this is all about. Celebrity pastors, they like the control and they like the celebrityness that, hey, I've got 1 million followers. People like what I have to say. That messes with your head. I know I fall prey to this sometimes. I want to do whatever God wants me to do, but I do look at numbers sometimes and be like, people watching, they're like looking at the numbers too. Like, not many people are watching. I'm like, yeah. I got a long way to go before the pride's going to take me down. But anyway, it's something you do have to be aware of. Yeah. And it's one thing. That's why we've wanted to share our services online at times. And I'm not really comfortable with that because what we do is very personal. It's very intimate. If you like what we have to share and teach, I understand that. Yeah. But you have to be careful because now people are flooding to you and they're like, ooh, I like what he has to say. And he becomes popular and now he becomes a celebrity. Yeah. That's dangerous. It's very dangerous. So be very careful. If you are a part of these mega churches, you got to ask yourself these questions, and be like, do I really know people here? Am I connected, or do I just go in? Is my relationship with my wife or my husband ever been challenged? Is it a place where I can go in and go, you know what? I'm struggling in my marriage, and these people over here, I know because I've been in this church for a while. They have a good relationship. I need to talk to them. No, these mega churches, you don't do that because there's no way you know these people. You go to the counselors. You go to the staff. And you get an appointment with them. 2 weeks later, if you haven't gotten divorced yet, you get a chance to go sit down with the counselors. And it's just not how the church was designed. Smaller is actually better. And stuff like this comes out of being big. You get celebrity pastors. Whatever happened to the humble? What was Jesus? He was humble.
Yeah.
He didn't walk around in wealth and riches and all these things. He's supposed to be our example, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I know we're not supposed to be homeless and all that, but be vagabonds. But man, it would sure beat the opposite. But anyway, these things, you can find some of those videos. It gets disgusting. But I guess that's kind of my encouragement is just maybe look for smaller groups and find, even if you're at a mega church, get hooked up with a couple of people, a few families that hey, I am going to commit to you guys, and I know you guys very well because that's important.
Yeah,
that's
important. You got to develop a relationship to be able to encourage or help somebody else.
Right.
You can't just expect to walk in and hear some word and that's going to change things for you. It's something where somebody's got to come alongside and be somebody who's going to lift you up and pull with you. And,
absolutely.
Go through those struggles together. you can help each other.
Yeah.
You can't do it if you don't know somebody.
And it doesn't mean that our style. We've had problems in our groups. There's been some issues, but we're not putting them in places of leadership right after that. And it's like, come on, man, think about this. Just because you're really good on a microphone or you can sing or whatever does not mean that you should.
Right.
So, any last thoughts?
I don't think so.
You had a lot to say earlier, and then you've been kind of quiet. So that's kind of Sarah's move right there. So, all right. Well, I guess that's it for this segment. And the celebrity pastor, watch out.
How well do you know your Bible?
That's her name.
Sarah got caught singing there.
Whatever.
Because this week we are doing Judges. This is the 7th book, right?
That's right.
And it's the first book out of the Pentateuch or the Torah. And this is an interesting book. If Hollywood got hold of the book of Judges, it would be a rated R movie. It would be violent.
It's not worth watching.
There is a lot of stuff there's a lot of stories, a lot more than people think are in the book of Judges. And so anyway, our kids used to watch this Bible show for kids, and there was a song about judges. And so that's kind of what you were singing. And now they know the names of the judges, all 12 of them.
It's a great way to learn the names, by the way.
So. Anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway,
you gonna sing it?
No, I don't know all
Okay.
the judges, but it's the Bentley Brothers. So anyway, if you go look up Bentley Brothers and the Judges song, it's funny.
It's a fun song.
Yeah, it doesn't really tell you anything about the book of Judges, but it just gives you the names of the judges.
Yeah.
So anyway, the book of Judges. What is the book of Judges about? It's not like your Supreme Court judges.
No, they were more like military leaders.
Or even like political type leaders in regions. And not all these guys were like good guys.
No,
not at all.
Actually, yeah. Well, and some of the guys maybe could be okay, but the people weren't okay.
Right.
And Judges kind of tells a repeating story. It's like it's on repeat, and the children of Israel, they disobey, they worship other gods.
So let's go back first to Joshua. So it starts off with the death of Joshua, right?
Right.
And so Joshua is kind of like what Moses did. It's like, hey guys, if you obey God, things are going to go well for you in the land, and this is the promised land.
Yep.
Well, they didn't quite take care of all the Canaanites, and so they're living in this land amongst the Canaanites. And the one important thing, all the laws and the rules and everything that we read about in like the Torah, basically the Pentateuch, there is to be separate from those nations, is to be a people set apart from those people groups. And what they were doing was terrible. You know, they were worshiping false gods, even child sacrifice, things like that. And so they want to be separated from them. Well, the book of Judges shows you their utter failure.
Yeah.
And where they actually are becoming just like the Canaanites. And so the judges have to come back. So it's a series of stories of failure and then repentance and failure and repentance. And
when they would repent, God would give them another judge that would come in and would deliver them.
That's right. So kind of a type and shadow of Christ,
a
deliverer. Now, these deliverers weren't always good people, they weren't always strong and faithful and all that, but they slowly got worse. And but anyway, we're not going to name all the judges, but or are we?
I mean, no, not necessarily. You can read the book. There's 12 of them.
Right, there's 12 of them. There is Abimelech at the end, which was like, well, is he a judge or not a judge? But I think he was a paper tiger. He put himself out there. He's not real. And God never appointed him.
Right.
Which is a whole nother interesting part of the story. But anyway, okay, so what do we have? We have the 12 judges, a bunch of stories. Good stories, like everything that you learned about in Sunday school. A lot of them are right here that we just like tell the kids version of it.
Right.
There's some stuff in this book.
Well, I mean, the biggest one that would come to mind would be Samson.
Samson's huge.
And that's a great story. parts of it.
Right.
But there's also other parts that maybe aren't so...
sugar-coated it, and I'm like, wow, that is... We all know the story of him killing all the Philistines and then destroying the temple while he's, finally did what he was supposed to do. But boy, oh boy, did he have a life of sin and indulgence and did not respect the God of Israel many times.
Yeah.
You even had a woman judge in there.
Yeah,
Deborah was in there, and then you have Jephthah. Yeah,
who made a foolish vow.
And
had to pay for it.
Yeah, and Gideon, who is in Hebrews 11, he was, and so did Jephthah, he made it in there.
Yeah, but Gideon's though a cool story. I mean, Gideon, first you start with the fleece, which I always think is a fascinating story. I mean, it's not a whole long story, but it's pretty cool. I mean, just how God answered his prayers. Sure. But then, you start with, you're going to go up against the Amorites.
Right.
Well, some
There's a
nation,
lot of ites.
And he starts with 32,000 men, and God's like, no, that's too many. Right. And so he pares down, ends up with 300, which in human terms, he would have no chance to defeat the enemy.
Not only 300, but with clay pots and fire.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah.
So
that's your murder weapons there.
Let's go. So yeah.
Yeah.
So he had doubts. He struggled with some things. He had the fleeces out, but these are human people. These are humans.
Yeah.
And the one big. We're going to cover some of the verses in here, but what else? Before we get to the verses, anything else you wanted to share here?
I mean, there's just there's the interesting story about Ehud, who was a judge, and
the fat king.
He killed the fat king, and the people are outside waiting because they think he's going to the bathroom or whatever. And finally, they're like, "All right, it's been so long, we should check on him." And sure enough, he was dead.
The sword was in all the way to if you're thinking judges like today, you're going to be shocked.
Yeah.
Like these are military leaders, and they do a lot of killing.
Yeah.
And just be prepared for that.
Right.
And so then Samson and Delilah, we know those. So there's 12 of them, and you can go read about them, the 12 judges. But here's so we have a verse here. Is this the one that I'm thinking of? They did what was right in their eyes.
Yep, that's actually twice in there. It's in Judges 17:6 and Judges 21:25. They say the same thing. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
And I've heard people say, oh, see, they did what was right in their own eyes, and so it was a good time. And read the book. They don't do good. And that's why God had to send them a judge and to deliver them and to set them straight. And time again. So doing what was right in their own eyes was never a good thing. And this obviously led up to the king.
Right.
King David, which is a whole different story in the next couple books. But the judges were that in-between stage between them and King David. And I say King David because King Saul was a king of the people, and God wanted David. But anyway, so these judges were in that intertestament period. I don't know if you can call it that, but the in-between period. And so it wasn't a good period in Israel's history. They were very rebellious. They would go after other gods, and God was very, very long-suffering and very patient and was gracious. And I think that's what people forget about the God of the Old Testament. They think the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament is different. But the God of the Old Testament is very gracious. He is very patient and long-suffering and putting up with people's rebellion and sin and making a way to deliver them out and calling them back to themselves. I mean, it's the same God. It's just we have a lot more of those. We have a lot more history and judgment in the Old Testament. But anyway, so what other key verses are there?
The only other one I had was Judges 2:10, and also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. So,
and the reason why you say that is because that repeats itself a good bit.
Yeah.
The generation that knew not the Lord. How is this even possible?
Yeah.
I don't even understand.
Yeah.
You just came out of into the promised land, and you had people like Moses and Joshua lead, and you saw mighty works of God, and you don't pass that on to your children?
Well, apparently they didn't.
Or maybe they did, but the next generation doesn't care. And they take it for granted, and it was maybe a time of prosperity. But it wasn't, because they would be conquered, and it would go bad for them. And so it's an interesting book because it is extremely violent.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be prepared for this.
It is extremely violent. I guess, though, I mean, if you don't visualize it too much, I mean, reading it isn't so bad because you do start. The problem is, like, you just kind of get numb to numbers, and it's like, okay, so they went and killed 26,000 people, you know, and you're just like, okay. But when you really think about it, I'm like, that's a lot of killing.
And it's just a lot of death, a lot of disobeying. It's not a cheery book, but yet you can see God's grace and God's redemption in these stories. Yeah. And I think that is the good part of it. And a lot of these faithful judges, the good ones, you know, they help deliver God's people, and you can see just what they had to deal with and all that. So it's a good book. It's definitely to show you the rebelliousness of God's people, and like our condition is we need a savior. Yeah. And it shows that every time the judge would come save them. What's coming up next? A king would save them. Well, that's still not good enough. So what do we need? We need God himself to come and save us. And that's what's going to happen in Jesus. Yep. But anyway, so that is the book of Judges. So tread lightly. It's not light reading with your kids, but
no, but it is good.
We've read it many times with the kids. And
it is good to see the power of God, though. Oh, and you can definitely see that through a number of them.
Absolutely. So that's it. Number 7th book.
Missionary Stories with Chuck.
All right. We got, we missed last couple weeks. No missionary stories with Chuck. And this week, I actually know the story.
Yeah, you know this one.
I know this one. This is a good one.
Yeah, it actually, I did it, and I'm like, I was actually looking forward to doing this one, but it's actually made me like, I think I'm going to go read the book again. Yep. Actually, a couple of books.
When I was in Bible college, this was the book that was the first one that for missions class or whatever, you have to read this one because this is the most important one.
The most important one.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Going to scare you away.
I know, right? Exactly.
All right, so today
this is not for the faint of heart either.
No, it's not, and we'll say that up front. I definitely would encourage the reading of this missionary's books. I've loved them. I have done them as read-alouds to the family, but do that with a word of caution. They're very intense. Yes. Definitely, read it yourself first so you don't come complaining to me whenever you start.
There's some offensive things in there that... In the story, it makes sense. He's not trying to be offensive, but the culture is offensive.
So our missionary for today is Don Richardson. Mm-hmm. Don and his wife in 1962, his wife Carol, and he and their 7-month-old baby. I forgot that part.
Yeah.
Went to work among the Sawi tribe of what was then Dutch New Guinea, Indonesia. Many tribes in the jungles of Indonesia were totally unevangelized and virtually untouched by the modern world. Though primitive, they were not at all unintelligent. They developed many skills for living in the jungle and had many legends and elaborate rituals ripe with meaning that had developed over the years. The Sawi were headhunters and cannibals, as were many of the other tribes.
So headhunters, what's the difference between a headhunter and a cannibal?
Well, headhunters could be they just hunted the heads and didn't eat them.
Took off the heads and shrunk them, or whatever. Cannibals ate you.
They did.
We know that.
The Sawi first thought that these white people, who they called Tuan,
Thank
you, Tuan, weren't quite human. Though they knew they were different from the spirits. The Lord opened the doors for these people to accept the missionaries through rumor that the Tuan could shoot fire with the guns, and through gifts the missionaries brought of such things as axes, which could fell a tree in 4 strokes, whereas the handmade stone axes required about 40 strokes. So 3 communities of villages settled around the new Tuan. Don spent hours listening to them, learning their language and their customs, and trying to tell them of God's truth about creation, the entrance of sin, the promise of a deliverer, and the life of Christ. But the Sawi weren't used to listening to tales about other cultures and grew bored until Don's narrative got to Judas.
Oh, this is interesting because this was, I don't know what you're going to say here, but, They revered Judas.
Yes, they did.
But go ahead.
They did. They listened intently to the story of Judas' close relationship with Christ and his betrayal. They whistled with admiration.
Yes.
In their culture, treachery and deception were virtues.
Yes, they love it. The more deceptive, if you can trick someone, the better. We love you. So they love Judas. This is bizarre. What do you do?
They valued not just cold murder, but the fattening with friendship of the unsuspecting victim, then delighted in telling about the look of astonishment on his face when he realized they were about to kill him and eat him.
Yep.
They thought Judas was the hero of the story.
That's right.
Don was astonished and chilled and tried to explain that the betrayal was evil, that Jesus was the Son of God, but he couldn't get through. Don and his wife Carol knew that God had some way to reach the culture and set to hope for some revelation.
So, I'll stop right here real quick. In missions class and things like that, this is a big, what do you do? Because you prepare, we're going to learn the language, we're going to be patient, we're going to share the message, and then they fall in love with the wrong guy.
Right.
You know,
right.
So what do you do at that point?
You're at a point where how do you break through?
So this is why at Bible college they were saying this is an important story, because they believe, and I'll give away the title of the book, but they believe every culture has a peace child. And go ahead and explain.
Very good. The next day, fighting broke out between the different villages. That day and in the days to come, God urged peace. Sawi villages usually kept some distance from each other, and Don realized that by having 3 villages come together to settle near him, the villagers were constantly being provoked to battle.
Sure.
Finally, he felt that he should leave and settle somewhere else so that the Sawi would not end up destroying themselves. The Sawi protested. They didn't want Don to leave. Discussions began, and leaders from both factions came to Don to assure him they would make peace. So the next day, the Sawi groups solemnly gathered. Don witnessed, to his amazement, a man from each of the warring groups bring one of his own children, with the mothers weeping, and exchange the children. Those in one group who would accept the child as a basis for peace were called to come and lay hands upon him, and the process was repeated in the other group. Then each child was taken to his new adoptive home. In a culture of violence and treachery, at some point, the Sawi had found a way to prove sincerity and establish peace. If a man would actually give his own son to his enemies, that man could be trusted.
Yeah, so that's the peace process. It was an interesting peace process, but I got to give my firstborn son to that tribe over there, and they give him our. So I guess I don't want to kill my son, so that's help keeps the peace, right? That's kind of the theory, I would guess.
I would guess. I mean, it's an interesting concept. I mean, the cultures are hard to understand, but, you know,
some of the kings would do this.
Yeah, they would.
They would, like...
they would give someone away in marriage to establish a sincere pact between them.
Right, like the king of England would marry a woman from Spain to keep peace. And so in some ways... they would do something like this, but given a child, it's totally different.
Yeah, so it horrified Don that his call for peace had caused this to happen. But soon, he began to see the parallels between the Sawi peace child and God's sacrifice of his own son.
Yeah.
He began to tell them that Jesus was God's own peace child to all men. Judas lost his status as hero because harming a peace child was one of the worst things someone could do. They began to see the inadequacy of their best because peace in their culture only held as long as the peace child lived.
Oh, wow. How about that?
When he died, old animosities could revive. But because Jesus rose again and was eternal, the peace he gave could never die.
That's right.
It took many months for understanding and conviction to sink in, and even then they were afraid of angering the demons by departing from tradition. But when God enabled Don and Carol to revive a Sawi tribesman who was near death, the Sawi took this, quote, as proof that the Tuan's God was powerful. And many began to believe. Eventually, more than half of the Sawi became believers. Their language was reduced to writing. They were taught to read. The New Testament was translated, and some of the Sawi became teachers of their own people. Don Richardson is one of the most read authors of Christian missions. Peace Child is his book about his mission work with the Saai. He's also the author of Lords of the Earth.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, I think I like that one better.
Right.
Yeah.
Eternity in Their Hearts.
Good too.
And numerous other books. All of Richardson's books focus on what he called his redemptive analogy thesis. The idea that each culture has some story, ritual, or tradition that can be used to illustrate and apply the Christian gospel message, which is you were talking about.
And that is so true. I mean, this is important that no matter what if you're sharing your faith, everyone's background, everyone has a different background, every culture, whether you're on the mission field or at LSU, you know. Yep. You can reach them somewhere. The gospel message it works.
Yeah, that's why I think you're encouraged in missions to go and learn the culture, so that you actually can meet them in their own culture. Not actually. It doesn't. We've seen it before through others. You can't bring an American culture missionary and go down there and try to preach to a tribe. It doesn't work. Right. It just doesn't work. They don't understand.
No. Their worldview is a little different. Doesn't mean you water down the gospel. But there's something like the peace. You're like, oh, okay, this will make sense to them. Right. This is what God did for us, and it'll make sense. Okay.
So in addition to the book, I haven't watched it. Okay. It's interesting, but there is a 30-minute video that was produced by Vision Video called Peace Child. Okay. Oh, wow. Where they actually filmed in the unspoiled jungles of Southwest Pacific. Peace Child dramatically portrays the startling reaction of Stone Age people to the gospel. So if you want to put it in the show notes, I got a link into the YouTube or some people. If you want to go see it, you can go see it. There again, I haven't watched it. I've read the book.
We're just saying.
I can't imagine. It's imaginable what you're going to see in the video because it's pretty dramatic.
It's an important book. I would say it's one of the better books, especially for missions. It is right up there, and I would encourage people, especially older kids and parents. There is it's just some of their traditional things are brutal, and he gets kind of graphic with it, and some of it are, they don't walk around with clothes on, okay? So let's just put it that way, and there is just some weird things that they do. But if you can get past that, and usually when you're older, you can, it's powerful. It's very, very powerful, and I enjoy all of his books. At least the three mentioned here. I don't know about his other ones, but Eternity in Their Hearts, Lords of the Earth, and Peace Child. Great books.
Yep.
Music with Sarah.
What song do you like?
All right. This is another episode of the Song of the Week.
Yep, I get to pick another song.
You do. And this one is not necessarily a worship song.
No, probably not. I mean, we actually have sung in our church.
Well, sure, but our church is a little bit different. But yeah, this is going like 30 years ago or so. When was this song written?
I think 2003. So
2003.
Maybe 20 years ago.
Okay. I thought it was before that.
It might have been, but that was the album I found it on. So anyway, the song is called Everything to Me by Avalon.
Yep.
And a song I grew up with, or at least felt like I grew up with. But
I was like 2003, we already had 3 kids or 2 kids.
I'm not sure. So anyway, but I've known for a lot of years. But I like it because I feel like it tells my testimony.
Oh, wow.
And so
because you grew up in Sunday school?
I did, and that's how it starts. I grew up in Sunday school. I memorized the golden rule and how Jesus came to set the sinner free. Mm-hmm. I know the story inside out. I can tell you all about the path that led him up to Calvary, but ask me why he loves me and I don't know what to say. But I'll never be the same because he changed my life when he became
everything to me.
Everything to me. And
he's more than a story.
Like that is my story. It's like I did grow up in Sunday school and I knew all those things, and at some point in my life, when I was young, he did become everything to me, and he's still everything to me. So, and the chorus just says, everything to me is more than a story, more than words on a page of history. He's the air that I breathe, the water I thirst for, and the ground beneath my feet. And then the second verse says, we're living in uncertain times, and more I find that I'm aware of just how fragile life can be. I want to tell the world I found a love that turned my life around. They need to know that they can taste and see. Now every day I'm praying just to give my heart away. I want to live for Jesus so that someone else might see that he's everything to me.
Right.
And so, I mean, like I say, I feel like it tells my story. So when I sing it, I'm like, this is
my story.
This is my
song.
story.
Oh, that's a different song.
So, but in life, sometimes you face different things, and I think sometimes people have things they fall back on. You're going through hard times, and you kind of turn to whatever. But I've realized that whenever I want to fall back on something, there's nothing there. Like he's everything. Like, so right. if he's not real, and if he's not, everything I've been taught and have known my whole life, then I have nothing to turn to.
Well, right. I mean, that is our answer, right?
Yeah.
If we are Christians, that is what we are supposed to fall on.
Yeah.
And trust on. And so, yeah, he is everything. I mean, it is a good song. And we have sung it before at church.
We have. And I mean, some people might say it's very cliche, I guess, or something. I don't know, but or a lot of Christianese.
I mean, there is some Christianese and stuff like that.
But I think sometimes people would say that because we're supposed to say he's everything, you know.
But the question is, do we really believe that? It's like we said, he's everything to me. He's more than a story, more than a page of history, all that. Well, yeah, of course he is. Yeah. And a lot of us just shrug our shoulders. Well, sure. But is he?
Right.
Is he?
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny because preparing for our episode today, I was listening to some secular. These people weren't Christians talking about mega churches and things like that, but they were kind of mocking evangelical Christians, as if their faith has to be everything. And they were like, as if you couldn't be a person and still worship God. They didn't quite understand it. And I'm like, well, apart from God, like, what else is there? Like, I am a person, but it's still, everything should bring glory to God in whatever I do. And so they have a mindset where you go to this sacred place and you go to do these sacred worship things secretly and no one else sees, and then you live your normal life. And but it's like, well, no, once you experience Jesus, which they have not, to be fair.
Yeah.
And once you know who the truth is, it is everything. Like I tell people, like when I got saved, now everything filters through Jesus.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I was perfect in all of that filtering through. I've made my own decisions at times, and I've made wrong decisions and things like that. But that was my intent, is like, everything needs to go with what God wants, and that is everything to me now, and because he changed my life. And so that's what the song kind of says, right?
That is what it says. And like I say, that's my story. That's how I feel. And what it says, he's the air.
Is this an anthem song?
Yeah, it kind of is. He's the air I breathe, the water I thirst for. It's like, I can't live without him.
Right.
Like, I mean, yes, technically I can live, like I can cook and I can do the things that we have to do in this world, but I would find no joy, no satisfaction, no pleasure. Nothing else satisfies. Nothing else brings anything. It's all just empty. So the only thing that brings any fulfillment is Jesus.
Yeah. So that's a good song by Avalon. I don't think they exist anymore. I don't know. It's been a while, but you can go look them up, Avalon, and it's called
Everything to Me.
Everything to Me. And I think they only have like one version, so you don't have to worry about trying to find the right version. So go on YouTube and search it and find it. And I don't know about the video, so I don't know if it's any good.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I've never seen it. Video.
Right. I've never seen the video, but anyway, I've only heard the song. And so anyway, go check it out. Everything to Me by Avalon.
The Mike Charleston Show is brought to you by Fellowship of Believers. For more information, go to our website at fellowshipofbelievers.org. Thank you for listening. We hope we have encouraged you to stand strong in the Lord Jesus and grow in him.